Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel and I'm here for the CardMaker Magazine blog today. We were told to find some inspiration online. I found this print at Anthropologie and I love it. I love the black and white flowers and the touches of gold, and I thought it would make a perfect card front. Whenever I'm stamping flowers, I always use colors, so I thought it'd be really fun to mix it up and try black stamping with flowers. So this is the first sample that I created, and I used this Hero Art set. It's from last summer, I think, and it was called the Graphic Layering Flower Set. So you can layer these up or you can stamp them individually. And I used the flower center to create the 3 gold dots that were in the inspiration piece. These are stamped in VersaFine and they are heat embossed with some clear embossing powder. And I thought it'd be fun to try a whole other card with a similar look. So I'm going to use the Hero Arts Charcoal Gray and the Intense Black. At least that's what I'm thinking right now. I will change my mind later in the video. And we're going to use some My Favorite Things Buildable Blooms stamp set. I have some white cardstock here. And I'm going to use my Misty tool because I'm going to be doing lots of layered stamping, and it just makes it so much easier to get a great impression. So normally I throw it into the corner there, but because I want to stamp off the edge, I need to place it in the middle of the Misty tool. So I'm giving myself on the grid 4 squares over and 4 squares up, and I'm using that bar magnet that I saw on Jennifer McGuire's blog, and I'll link to it down below. It's so much easier than using the 2 little circular magnets, in my opinion. So first what I'm going to do is grab the bottom layer of a bunch of flowers, and you can see on the My Favorite Things stamp sets they have a little outline around the flowers that go together, which makes it really easy because otherwise I would be really struggling to figure out what goes with what. So I'm just going to try and place sort of a grouping of flowers and stems here, and those I'm all going to stamp in gray. And I actually decide that I'm going to do the leaves in black, so I remove that, and I'm just going to do the bottom layer of the flowers first. I have to realign my cardstock there so that I stamp exactly where I wanted it. Now that I have my flowers placed on the door and picked up, I'm going to grab my Hero Arts Charcoal Gray ink, and I'm going to ink up all of the stamps that I have right now. I'm going to make sure I have a ton of ink on there and they all look covered. And then I'm going to close the door and make sure that I press on each of the stamps. Now, that looks pretty good, but I decided that I wanted a little bit more full of an impression and a little bit darker gray. So I'm re-inking them. Then I have to make sure that my cardstock is lined up exactly where I had it the first time, and then I can close the door and re-stamp. And with the mist, you can do this. It's a little hard with the paper in the center, but you can still get it done. So now I like the way that that looks. So I'm removing those stamps because I'm not going to need those anymore. And then I'm going to come and decide which layering stamps I want to do on top. So I'm grabbing for each of the flowers the next layer. Some of these have 3 layers and I only use 2. You can use as many as you want, but I think for this purpose, since we're doing like a really dark gray and a black, I don't think you need 3 layers. But you could, of course, do a really light gray, a medium gray, and then the black on top. That would look pretty too. But because I'm really going for the black effect here of the flowers, I'm just going to do the 2 layers. So I'm lining up all the middles of the flowers, and then I'm bringing in my leaves as well. And I realized that I have kind of a larger space than I thought I was going to have here. So what I decide to do is layer 2 of the stems on top of each other. To do that kind of layering, I'm just going to stamp one at a time. So I have the large leaf in there, and then I have all the centers of the flowers. And what I decided was I wanted to use some Wow embossing powder. It's the black glitter Wow embossing powder. So I'm going to use my anti-static tool first, and instead of using the Hero Arts Intense ink, I'm going to use some VersaFine Onyx Black. And this way I can heat emboss it because it has that pigment quality to it that is slow to dry. Then I can put the embossing glitter powder over top. So I'm going to ink up all the centers and the first stem. and close the door, and you can see that I have no problem getting a perfect impression for all of those. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to pour some of the glitter embossing powder over top and cover up all of the little areas that were the centers of the flowers and that little stem there. And you can see that the anti-static tool does a great job, and I'll make a mistake later and forget to use it and I'll have to fix it. So now I'm just using my heat tool to heat set that black embossing powder, and I wish you could see it in person because it's glittery, it's shiny, it has a touch of dimension, and it's really, really pretty. So here I am coming in to do the other stems. Since I'm going to layer, one I'm just going to put towards off the bottom there, and the second one I'm going to cross over the stem right in the middle there. And I think that that gives it sort of a layered look. Since it's in black and white, it doesn't much matter. I don't have to really mask it off or anything like that. So I pick up those pieces with my door of my Misty, and then I come back in with the VersaFine Black Onyx and stamp those two spots there, and then I'm going to heat emboss that. You can see I'm doing this kind of in steps so that I can get everything heat embossed in between, let it cool, and then go on to the next step. So nothing smears, the powder doesn't come off, all things like that. So now I'm heat embossing it with my heat tool, and that will take care of stems. And then I realized that there's this one little spot on the bottom right hand corner and it's empty and it's bothering me. So I go back to my favorite things stamp set, the Buildable Blooms, and I find another flower that I decide to layer in the corner there. And I just want a little bit of it, just a touch to kind of cover that space. In the inspiration piece, they didn't go all the way to the right hand edge, but since I had at the top flower, I wanted to do it at the bottom too. So again, I close the door. This time I'm going to go back to the charcoal gray because this is the bottom layer of the flower. So I'm going to ink that up and stamp it off the edge there. And I'm going to stamp it twice just so that I get it as dark as the other flowers that were stamped twice. And here's where I make my mistake. Okay, so here's the next layer of the flower, and I pick it up and I ink it up, and I have forgotten to use my anti-static. So watch what happens when I put the embossing powder on top. Yeah, it covered the entire flower. So you couldn't really see the line. You couldn't see the layer. All you have to do though, as long as you haven't used your heat tool yet, all you have to do is wipe it away. So the ink will still be there, but the powder will be gone. However, the ink is now dry, so I needed to restamp it so that I could then pour the glitter on top and it would stick. And I had a little problem there because the paper was warping a touch, and so when I went to close the door, everything shifted. So now I put my anti-static, and don't worry about the little smudge at the top. We're going to take care of that later. So now I stamp with the VersaFine, and now I come in with the black glitter embossing powder again, and that's perfect. Now it only sticks to the part that has the VersaFine ink because everything else has got the anti-static tool on it, so it won't stick. So I heat emboss that. Now I'm going to take my mono sand eraser and just clean up some of the smears. With all of this inking and all of it in black, I tend to get it all over my fingertips and make little smears. This little sand eraser is very affordable for how wonderful it is. So I think I bought a pack of 2, and I'll link to that down below as well. Okay, so now I'm going to layer this over a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 gold foil cardstock. I'm going to punch out 3 little gold foil dots. I'm going to use my ThermaWeb Memory Runner XL to adhere the stamped panel to the gold foil cardstock, and just make sure that's all straightened up. I turned it over to really smooth it out so that I wouldn't, again, get some more smears on there, but there was one that was still remaining, so I took care of that. And then I'm going to use the memory runner again to put the 3 little dots. Again, this was from the inspiration piece. They had the 3 gold dots at the top left, and I really like that. So I'm putting 3 gold foil dots that I just punched out up at the top. And then I decided that I needed a sentiment. So instead of stamping, because I was tired of getting stuff all over my fingers, I decided to die cut a thanks sentiment out of glitter black fun foam. It is self-adhesive, so all I'm doing here is pulling out the little bits in between the letters there. This is a Simon Says stamp die, and I am, again, just taking out the little spots in between the A's and the K's and things like that. And then once that's done, I just have to press it down onto my card, and it is self-adhesive. So the only thing about this when you're using this foam and the self-adhesive is, it sticks to your fingers a little bit when you're trying to place it and move it around. And if you mess with it too much, they can get a little out of shape. So what I usually do is I like to flip it over for some reason. I don't know why. It just helps me see it straighter, so that's why it's upside down right now. And then I am taking a little Swiffer dusting cloth and picking up all the stray bits of glitter. So the last thing that is needed to be done is to adhere it down to a card base. I have a top folding white cardstock 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base, and I'm using my memory runner to do that. So those are the 2 samples that I created based on that piece by Anthropologie. Just lots of black ink stamping of flowers with some gold touches. I really loved working off of this piece as inspiration. I'll definitely do it again sometime. Thanks so much for stopping by.